And we're live. It is Wednesday, the 28th day of May, which is to say the third to last day of May, in the year of our Lord 2025. It is 8 o'clock a.m., and I can't even pretend that the sun is shining because it is not. It is pouring rain. But I hear that up in the great far north, the sun may be shining. Is that correct, Alicia?
It is for the second day in a row after like weeks of what feels like never-ending rain.
Yeah, and the birds are chirping, and one of them flew into my living room this morning as I was writing what, if I have to say so myself, is a dog shirt daily of unusual excellence, complete with a defense of himself by E.J. Wittes for La Faire Drosophila, which I just want to say I did not out him as the child responsible for losing a fully, like worthy of Exodus swarm of locusts like fruit flies on my house. But he felt himself accosted, defended himself in public for it. I want to say I don't think um, I don't know. You decide. Watch the show. Watch my Jacques about EJ, and then read his defense. And you guys decide. Maybe in tomorrow's dog shirt, we can vote on whether EJ is convicted or acquitted in impeachment. Um, Look, we're not allowed to have fun anymore. Um, the sun isn't shining. And as I was writing this dog shirt, just to finish the thought, a bird flew into my living room and chirped at me and the dog. So I can verify personally that the birds are chirping this morning because one did so like within inches of my head. And if you've never had a bird in your living room, getting them out can be a little bit of a complicated thing because you can't just say, "Excuse me, sir, the door's over here." You kind of have to herd them a little bit. And dogs get very excited about birds. And so we finally cornered the bird in my studio porch with the hammock, and I closed the door. I couldn't get it out, so I just opened the door of the porch, and that is why I am banished to my upstairs comfy chair today. Look, we're not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to have Mike Pesca, whom I was afraid was not showing up because he didn't respond to my text this morning. And Alicia thought this is noticed that this is a recurring behavior on my part and made fun of me about it. But she showed up just in case, and for which I'm very appreciative. Mike Pesca, how are you?
I'm well. How are you guys doing? Well, I've heard some, and the bird in the living room should replace the bats in the belfry, I think, and the silver spoon, and the little dog laughed, and the boy in the moon. Yeah.
And
That's what that triggered in my head.
I will take the Drosophila, the bird, over the swarm of Drosophila any day. Birds are kind of cute.
What if you have a liking or a love of Drosophila? Do you have Drosophilophilia?
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways we can go with this. But Mike, I hear that you have an agenda item this morning. And I have an agenda item for you.
I could put items on the agenda. I just thought you might want to discuss the book that I've read and that everyone has either read or seen 45 interviews about. Original Sin, Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson. I'm interviewing them on Saturday at not just a festival, but this is exciting. It's called an Ideas Festival.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if
you can go around to different booths and buy ideas.
They have like corn, and it just I guess it's like don't try the brown acid of ideas. I don't know how that's gonna go, but yeah, It's an
Yeah,
ideas
all right.
festival.
So let's talk about the book. And then I have a project for the three of us to do, which is the as you may know, Mr. Pesca, Kate Klonick and I Lord lasered a giant banner of Donald Trump that's
Yes.
hanging on the Department of Agriculture next to a giant banner of Abraham Lincoln. And as we were doing this, we had this idea that maybe we should do a more elaborate special military operation in which the two banners kind of talk to each other.
Ooh.
And so the Greek chorus and I and Holly storyboarded this. And I got about halfway through, and then we threw a lot of ideas at the table, and then on the table, and then I beat them into what feels like half of the storyboard. And I have to say, it's great, but it's only half done. And so I thought the three of us would finish it. We would finish the concept, and then I will be able to, at the first time that the sun is shining or the clouds are gone, I will go out and do it. So that's my concept for today's show. Does that work for you?
That seems brilliant.
All right.
So Lincoln establishes the Department of Agriculture.
Correct. And that's why he's hanging on the
but
front
it is
of it.
not a cabinet department until I believe it's not that I believe, I looked it up, 1892, I believe it, Wikipedia tells me. So it goes for a while without cabinet status, and therefore the first president to have commissioner of agriculture in his cabinet is who would that be in 1892?
That sounds Grover Cleveland.
It is Cleveland, yes. Interesting, fascinating.
Am I right about that?
Yeah, it is. Good stuff.
All right. Jake Tapper. So what hasn't been said about this subject?
I just want to know, I guess he's gotten incoming from, Alex has not gotten that much incoming, but Jake has gotten incoming from two constituencies, given that it's America. I think two main constituencies. I'm sure there's some radical faction of Bolsheviks who has, or is the Zostrins. Is that how you pronounce them? There's some slice of the electorate who hates him for other reasons, right? Maybe he wears leather and the vegans don't like him. But I'm just wondering if you think either of those two main criticisms are fair. And I'll say, yes, of course it's fair as a member of the media. He didn't suss out what was actually going on, didn't aggressively as he could have. And I won't make excuses. Everyone except Alex could have more aggressively pursued it. Maybe the two Wall Street Journal writers who were on Biden's decline a little early. And you can find clips pretty easily of Jake Tapper not just being incurious or a bit defensive about Biden's status, but aggressively going at, say, Laura Trump, who he said was making fun of a stutter when she was just pointing out he wasn't all there once. So that's one category of person who says, Jake, you're part of the problem, you missed it. And the other sort of person is probably the exact ideological opposite, who says, why are you bothering with this now? You're obsessed with nonsense. We've got this menace in the White House. Now, on that, I have no time for that because it's not as if Jake Tapper, if you've watched his show, has gone at all easy on the Trump administration, part one. And two, to sign up to that, do you also have to believe that the best way to understand history is not to learn from it, or learn from it at a later date when all threats have passed? Because now is not the time is always and constantly the argument. So I think I have no time for that argument. But do you? And do you have any more time for the first argument that he was really part of the problem, having missed Biden's decline?
So before I answer that, I'm curious, Alicia, has this story taken Canada by the same storm as it has like it seems to me we have three concurrent stories going on about this in the United States. One is the Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson story. Biden was in decline and people were covering it up. The second is we hate Jake Tapper. And the third is, wait a minute, let's have a conversation about whether the first story or the second story is the current story.
Right.
And all of those stories are going on at the same time. Has any of them
There's a fourth story,
invaded
which is just the
Canada?
actual contents of the book. That's the
Right.
story. Yeah, yeah.
And I just would like to say mercifully no. None of it. I had to Google this.
Media bubbles, it's like you live in Canada, there's a different information ecosystem.
I get NPR updates every morning. I get like a flash news thing, and I still hadn't really. Maybe I heard some rumblings about decline, but like honestly, I mean, what does it matter now? And why aren't we talking about somebody else's decline? And did you know that the king came yesterday and read our throne speech? Sovereign.
I did see that. I even saw him prancing on his horse. All right.
I hear the king has not had a full cabinet meeting in a year. I hear when George Clooney met the king didn't recognize him, and George Clooney said, "That's scans. That's fine. No
Yeah,
problem."
but he doesn't do our day-to-day ruling, so that's okay. There's no executive orders coming out of him.
There's no administrative function, yeah.
So I will say, I guess here's my answer to your question, Mike.
Yeah.
Obviously, it is a legitimate story. And the people, I heard you're not even mad recently, and I don't think it is reasonable to say we shouldn't be talking about this because Trump's mental decay is so much worse. We should actually be talking about both. Partly because one helped lead to the other, and partly because I do think there is a credibility problem, not within the Democratic Party as a whole as a result of this, because I think a lot of people genuinely didn't know. But certainly within a certain inner circle of Biden's protection, family and closest aides, there was an effort to withhold important information that turned out to be important. And I do think that was a fateful decision, and it was a terrible decision, and it was one for which they should be accountable. So I don't have a problem with the story at all. I do have a problem with the saturation coverage that CNN in particular is giving to the story. And the kind of decision that we are treating this as more important than what is going on right now because our guy has a book, I think is journalistically indefensible and has become kind of comic. And so you have this, it's the same weekend as they pass the big bill. There's shit going down between Ukraine and and Russia in Istanbul. There's the president's overseas trip where he's Qatari jetting and taking huge payouts in what's in crypto shit, and the 100th interview with Jake Tapper about the Biden stuff strikes me as very contrived. And it's contrived, I don't think for political reasons. I think it's because, hey, we have something that other people don't have. But I do think it's indefensible. And so that's number one. Which of the criticisms do I subscribe to? I think neither. I certainly don't think we shouldn't be talking about it. It was a catastrophic error on the part of and it's one of the reasons that we're in the situation that we're in. Um, uh, Do I think, um, but I do think it is possible to over discuss it as well as to suppress it. And I don't find it, honestly, a very interesting story. Um, and so I guess my view is I have no beef with Jake Tapper. I don't think, by the way, the criticism of him that he missed it too is um, a fair one. A lot of people missed it. They missed it until that's why it worked, right? Because Biden was functional enough that you could cover it up enough of the time that until that debate, um, you could be in denial about it, or you could be you could genuinely not have seen it. Including, by the way, some people quite close to him had never seen him in situations like that. So I think, the fact that Jake Tapper, you know, fell for it, as by the way, did I. Not that I have any close contact with the president or anything, but um, I don't think that, stops you from saying, wait a minute, how did we all get fooled like this? And I thought he was rather classy about apologizing to Lara Trump. And so I think that argument is just silly.
Yeah. So, out of curiosity, I looked for how often they talked about it on the day of publication and the day afterwards. And the day of publication, Biden was talked about a lot because that coincided with the news that he had his cancer diagnosis. So it was often mentioned in relationship to that very large story. I think it was the day after, but still references to the big, beautiful bill were more. And then the next day, the day after publication, there were almost, the Biden stories subsided. There were two interviews the whole day on Original Sin, one on Tapper's show, one on Caitlin Collins' show, and there were 33. Well, actually, that's an overcount. Some story headlines have the word bill twice in it, but there were over 20 stories about the bill. So I think Jon Stewart did a good job doing a mashup of Jake hyping it, so maybe we get the impression that this is all he talked about. So I think that's maybe a little bit overstated. You said a couple really interesting.
I will say, I heard about it constantly. And
yeah,
maybe
the
that's
PR
just
team did a good job. Yeah.
good publicity on Jake's part, but I did feel like it was artificially present in my feed.
Right. So the issues that I think transcend the particulars of Joe Biden, we can't go back and replay the past, are real, which is how the most powerful person in the world can be, because we have proof of this because it happened, can be surrounded by what the Biden team and Tapper and Thompson call the Politburo, which is really just four people, can be kept away from cabinet ministers, the most important people in his party in government, certainly everyone else who's a political rival in government. So you get the point where when you say he was competent enough, that's a dicey proposition, because even though it is true he had good days and bad days, we're not sure what the ratio was. We're not sure how bad the bad days were.
Okay, look, all I'm saying is objectively, he was competent enough that you could hide it until that debate.
Right. He was competent enough that Mike Donlin, Steve Ricchetti, really four other people, Jill Biden and her chief of staff, could pull off what they describe in the subtitle as a cover-up. Now, I don't think it's a cover-up, but it strikes exactly at how parties work, how democracy works, how the press should work. I mean, the fact that it took Ezra Klein, and credit to him, so long to be the first high-profile member of the media, of which there are dozens of potential people. It's not like Ezra is the dean of the press corps. He's someone who people listen to. And he said after the declined Super Bowl interview, this is bad. The Super Bowl's in January. That debate was in June. So, yeah, it's a true And I think that even if Biden were,
Whoops.
well, I think even if Harris were president, you'd still get people who are upset by it. I do think so. And even if Nikki Haley had won the Republican nomination, you'd probably still get the now is not the time type arguments. I don't know. There's never a perfect time to talk about this highly imperfect, but they call it cover up. But yeah, it's a little less than a cover up because we all saw signs of it, but it's not acceptable. And I think it needs to be got to immediately. Right. And at some depth, I don't mind the depth. I'm not one of those who thinks that attention in one domain takes away from all attention in others. I paid a lot of attention to the big bill.
I don't have a problem with a certain amount of navel gazing on this subject. It's called accountability and it's important. Alicia.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to sound really mundane compared to where you all went with this, but have you ever had a family member who had dementia or Alzheimer's?
Oh, yes.
So you know that the closer the proximity, in some ways, the harder it is for you to tell, deal with, accept, or come out about. And then add to that, if you're dealing with somebody who has cognitive failures of certain things. I mean, I learned this from having a concussion. You as a person also don't really realize that you're losing cognitive ability to tell people. So your decision making is hampered. The person who's closest to you still sees the same person. It's really hard to like say or know what's going on inside another person's head. I can just see how like a lot of people around them might have been like, oh, something's going on, maybe something's not going on, and it can take a long time. I realize that we're talking about the president and that changes things. I think the discussion here might be then a little bit different, is like, not to be ageist, but maybe you don't want to have 80-year-olds or near 80-year-olds as your leader. I mean, I think I'd be tired now, middle-aged.
So I could not agree with that more, and I am not attributing bad motives to anybody involved. And although I haven't read the book, and maybe the book has evidence of bad motives, I accept that entirely. And I also accept the fact that there should be an age limit on the presidency. There's a certain vigor associated with that job that there is just no, it's not that there's no way that somebody could do after a certain age. It's just that there's no reason after a certain age that we should assume somebody is capable of doing the job, and you make these decisions based on averages. And look, the Constitution says nobody under 35. I would way rather have a 33-year-old president than I would have an 80-year-old president.
These are all reasonable points. I think I agree with them. If I had to, if there was an up-down vote, I'd probably agree. Here are the counterpoints. One is that as technology, medical technology changes, I think, when you make a constitutional amendment, it's supposed to last for 100 years or maybe more. 80 in 80 years might not be the 80 today. In fact, it definitely won't be. I mean, I know the 40 and 50, and certainly the 53 and 54, right, Ben? They're not the old 50.
That's 55
Pointed.
to you.
Very pointed.
Oh, I didn't know you were 55. I thought you were 54.
I'm 55.
I thought
yeah.
I was always like within a year of you.
Yeah, no, I'm just freaking old. That's
so they're not the new ones. So I think aging will change. Point two, and to give voice to what you're saying, Ari Emanuel's in the book, and he did a live event, and he said, I credit the founding fathers for setting an age requirement. I blame them for not setting an age limit. It got a laugh, and then he couldn't contain himself and started swearing because he's Ari Emanuel. But one of the clearest thinkers in the book, and a person who was a great touchstone to Joe Biden's mental incapacity, was Nancy Pelosi, a real hero of the book, and she's 2 years older than him. So maybe you have age limits and they're different for men and women, or there's a Pelosi clause.
Or maybe being Speaker of the House is a less taxing job than being president.
Is it? Do you think
Yes.
Mike Johnson has less stress in his life than Donald Trump?
No, but that's because Trump is pathological and therefore does not experience the stress.
Right. Yeah, this is true.
Mike, I have a weird question for you though now. Now that you raise this and in the future, and maybe we'll live longer and be healthier.
That's the year 2000 from Conan.
Okay. So like the year 2100,
In
a
the
new song for
year
this.
2000.
Where would you stand on implants, on brain implants and longevity and being a president? Given that there is a billionaire down there who has been moving to do these brain interfaces.
Yeah, I think if baseball players can have LASIKs, then presidents could have brain implants. It seems it's all in the details, right? It seems crazy now, but we'll all have a little bit of boosting, and it depends how they work. And you hope that Elon doesn't put some special code in there to addict you to Twitter. But from what I understand, in the purely Isaac Asimov realm of this, if they are to just regenerate portions of your brain that have stymied, then they seem positive. But then again, you could stimulate a portion of someone's brain a little bit and then become a very weird and different person. I think so. I was having this talk with my friend who said, over the last 30 years, you could take all of technology. And he acknowledged, I know I'm going to come off as a Luddite, and you're probably going to be able to point out things to me that I'm missing. And of course, but you could take all of what we count of as technology, which is mostly the communications technology. And he was saying, I think on net, it's a negative. I think that I would trade it all. I would trade all the everything from social media, but I would trade all the email. I would trade the phone in my pocket. I trade it all. I remember what life was like in 1982. I traded all with that. I don't think that it has helped me. The one exception is when we start having these medical marvels and when we start really adding to longevity and really adding to the quality of life, then I think on that I'll take the bargain. But he's saying, I'm not seeing it now. And I, since then, have been, passing along all these amazing breakthroughs. And he probably doesn't realize, what the cancer cure rate for leukemia is and how much lifespan has extended because of cloud particles from coal, which is amazing. And also, if you take away addiction and if you take away our murder rate, our specifically U.S. maladies, our lifespan would be going up quite a bit, just like France. But I take his point. And until
but his point is incorrect.
Go ahead.
Because absolutely nothing forces him to use any technology since 1982. And he says he wouldn't do it, but, he could do it.
No, he couldn't have his job. He couldn't do the job he has, and most of us couldn't.
Fine, he could do everything except you could wall off your.
But his identity is his job, and people have to be in touch with him all the time, and he's saying
his job was impossible in 1982. He chooses to have a profession based on technological development since then.
No, it's not. And the guy. This happens to be a niche. There are probably many people like him. But this is just an interesting thing to debate. If there are three choices, the equivalent of a hermit today, someone who steps outside society, he could choose that, and that is not the life he chooses. He's saying in a hypothetical world where none of this existed, it's not true. He's very deeply considered it, and he's said, I think that this world has gotten worse because of all that's happened.
I just want to say, I know he's a gentleman who is actually a cybersecurity guru, a very important figure in the cybersecurity world, who does not use any technology more advanced, HTML or further. He writes only in an Emacs editor. He doesn't use the web. He doesn't use you can draw lines.
Yeah.
He sends emails in text only. And when he sends me content for Lawfare, it comes in a TXT file. And it'll say like this, italicized.
Yeah. But he lives in a world where the electorate lives in the actual world that we live in. So that alone has a huge impact on his life and choices. Who the president is.
I'm just saying adoption of technology is a choice. And Ted Kaczynski, who rejected all technology except the typewriter, and except the U.S. postal system, and except a certain amount of modern explosives. Like we all draw the lines where we draw the lines. All right, I gotta cut this off because we gotta shift gears because we need to storyboard the rest of this special military operation. So here we go. And so for those who were here the other day when we storyboarded this,
Oh, cool.
this is my oh wait, Joel has a question. Joel, what's your question?
So, Ben, would you mind putting me on the bigger part? Because I have a book to plug.
Sure.
Is it Original Sin by Jake Tapper?
No, that's kind of why I thought I would add this. Before you total out this item, I think this is an important plug of an important book that I think
All right, go for it.
someone will appreciate. Look what came in the mail.
Oh.
Whoa.
That's mine.
Yes, it is.
I was
So
muted.
anyway.
I couldn't react.
There you go. Yep,
Thank
she
you,
came in the mail
Joel.
yesterday.
Oh,
Yay!
that's super cool. You ordered it from the publisher directly.
Yeah, I sure did. Okay,
great.
I'm
anyway.
nervous. And I'm living in fear of people reading it and then hearing how awful it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
You're
press
not
on, group.
supposed to say that. All right. So we are going to so here's the concept, Mike. They have the Department of Agriculture has put this these banners up. Now, this ignore the projection, the crude projection that Kate and I did the other day. It just happens to be in the picture.
Yes.
So here is the concept that these two figures should be having a dialogue with one another, and that we can adjust their faces and bodies by drawing on top of it as needed. And so the idea was that Lincoln should be giving the Gettysburg Address.
Okay.
So first he says 77 years ago. Hang on, let me just adjust this a little bit so that we can see the whole screen. Whoops. All right, 77 years ago, and then Donald Trump interrupts him and says, okay, and one other thing, where these are actual Trump quotes, we're going to put them in a voice bubble, a speech bubble, and sometimes the character will be thinking things in which we'll put it in a thought bubble.
Okay.
Whoops, that was not what I meant to do. All right, so Trump interrupts him and says, this is Donald Trump, hopefully your favorite president of all time, better than Lincoln, better than Washington. And Lincoln thinks, what a clown. And then we have some possible clown gesture images for Trump that we can create. And then he goes on with the speech. Our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty. And Trump wonders what's a score. That was suggested by a member of the Greek chorus, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. And then Trump observes that which he really did
say that, yeah.
He did say that most people don't even know Lincoln was a Republican. Lincoln says, now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. And Trump responds, Lincoln was probably a great president, although I've always said, why wasn't that settled? You know, I'm a guy, it just doesn't make sense that we had a civil war. Almost like you'd say, why wasn't that settled? To which Lincoln thinks, for this I saved the Union. And then he goes on with his speech. We are met today on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion, and blah, blah, blah. It's right and proper that we do so. And Trump cuts him off again. Again, the idea here is to be evocative of his criticisms of Zelensky without mentioning Zelensky or Ukraine. So many mistakes were made. See, there was something that could have been negotiated. I think you could have negotiated that. All those people died. So many people died, and Lincoln face palms.
So the palm is the image, right? That'll scan.
You can't change the underlying image, but
yeah.
you can have him sort of slap his forehead.
And will it move the palm?
I can animate it. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
To which then Trump goes on.
And will we see his Marfan type fingers?
I'm sorry?
Will we see his Marfan type fingers move through the air?
I don't think, it's got to be very crude and very simple, but it will be animated.
But if they're chunky.
Notice then that the Gettysburg Address is disappearing and it's becoming a Trump monologue here.
Oh, cool.
I think it would be hard if George Washington came back from the dead and he chose Abraham Lincoln as his vice president. I think it would have been very hard for them to beat me, to which we will then adapt this AI-generated image of Lincoln giving Trump the finger. But here's the problem, guys.
Maybe instead of the finger, that's a little undignified. Can you go with the Heisman, or because the source material is the source material? That's the best you could do.
No. I can do.
What do you think of that? I mean, I could see when Trump gets upset and tries to persecute you, he will talk about how disgusting that was. But if you give him the face palm, you'll.
So you mean just
that.
Like Lincoln going
talk to
like
the hand?
This?
Yeah.
The hand?
Yeah.
Okay, let's change that. All right. Let me.
I mean, a good Vafanculo might not be as strong, but I'm not sure Americans would get it.
Okay, so here's the question: what happens after this? See, I got this far in the storyboarding, and then I was like, okay, Trump has hijacked the Gettysburg Address.
Right.
Lincoln is kind of increasingly irritated and frustrated. But then what happens?
Okay. Well, I got a couple ideas. First of all, what about in the debate when he said, I've been the greatest president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln? That's another good one.
That is a good one. And I have the exact quote somewhere. So let's put that in. Trump, greatest pres for black people since Lincoln. I think it's actually the actual quote is something like, and we won't even talk about him. Like the quote is quite weird.
Yeah. Well, he said it during the debate, and then he said it again when he was talking to the NABJ. Yeah. And then he probably, I don't have exact recall, but I think he probably has said the late great Abraham Lincoln, and then maybe Lincoln could take that as a bit of a compliment. But then, of course, he's also said the late great Hannibal Lecter and the late great
I'm not
Alphonse Capone.
Yeah. Me too.
But like, where is this going?
I think maybe to the theater.
Ouch.
Well, he wanted the Kennedy Center. I guess Lincoln Center was taken, and maybe Lincoln can gradually encourage him. All right, if you want to go to the theater, you can.
What do you think, Alicia? Where are we going with this?
Escalated quickly for a man who didn't want to give him the finger.
No, you can't. This is just among us. I don't want. I don't want James Comey's visitors or the guys who visited you to come to the house again.
We're never getting back in this country.
We're not making assassination jokes, except we can make retroactive Lincoln assassination jokes.
Right.
Like he would rather die?
Well, like other than that, the play was great. By the way, the play was terrible. If you've never read Our American Cousin, it's a like if I'm gonna get shot to death watching a play, it ain't gonna be that one.
Do you want to hear how crazy I am? I got the text of it and loaded into ChatGPT because I'm not gonna read the whole play, and I got a summary, and it does indeed seem bad.
It's a bad play.
Yeah.
But there's also, there's a lot of good Lincoln assassination jokes. Like Lincoln needed to go to Ford's Theater that night, like he needed a hole in the head.
Yeah.
There's, I mean, you can make retroactive assassination jokes about long dead presidents. It's really the prospective ones that are no, but they're in bad taste.
I
and
want
we're
to
not
tell you
gonna
that
do them.
after I loaded that into ChatGPT, I just realized this. I had a dream where all the citizens of DC who are in the play, who are at the play, got together and they were like, "But we want to see how the play ends." And there was, like a fringe festival or a samizdat type of version of the play, so everyone could go and see how the play ended.
I think somebody should stage the play with an assassination of somebody in the audience
Yeah.
in the play at the moment that it happens. Obviously fake, but like, you should experience it at the play as a member of the audience did.
Well, that is dangerously close to how we got Laura Loomer, right? She was in the audience of Julius Caesar, in Central Park, where they made him Trump, and she jumped on the stage. Remember that? Got a lot of attention, and now she's calling the shots at the State Department. Wow.
Right. So maybe we shouldn't do that. All right. Greatest president for Black. So what does Lincoln have to say or do, like when Trump says that about him?
Are there some other great Lincoln quotes out there about, well, I'm thinking of all the Twain quotes about letting a person show himself to be an idiot.
It's better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak out. There's the "you can fool some of the people all of the time" line, but I don't think Lincoln actually really said that.
No.
Somebody said something about if you argue with an idiot, there are two idiots, but I don't think it's him.
Yeah. But also, we can just make him think things or do things physically. It doesn't have to be. Does
Better to
anybody?
remain silent than keep your mouth shut and appear stupid. No, what was it?
It's better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak out and
That's
remove
Mark
all
Twain.
doubt. Yeah.
God, the internet sucks.
Um.
It's just getting worse. It's getting worse out there.
What do you guys think? I mean, we could just end it here with the talk to the hand thing, but it feels really abrupt. It has no resolution.
How about something about would Lincoln appear petty if he complained about the penny?
Oh, the penny is a good idea.
Or could Trump lord the penny over him? You're just upset about the penny?
Oh, that's a good idea. Because I could make a good penny image.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm killing the penny.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. Of course, I gotta say that's a complicated one because I actually agree with Trump about the penny.
This isn't a really great quote, but the penny's a good idea. Lincoln's quotes, I mean, speeches at that time were just long. They're not really great for like short statements.
And you had to climb a tree and watch for 2 hours.
There are two great Lincoln speeches that are really short. One is the Gettysburg Address, which is it's only like 15 lines. And the other is the second inaugural. Now, we could shift to the second inaugural. Holly had this idea that the line "with malice toward none," Lincoln could say that, and Trump could be like, except, the losers and haters, and we could do that. I mean,
Lincoln could talk about the government of the people, for the people, and then Trump can interrupt and say, by the losers.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you.
Yeah, so the line is, "with malice toward none, with charity toward all." with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we're in, to bind the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle and for his widow and orphan, and to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among
His
ourselves.
widow and orphan. I like people who weren't widowed.
Yeah, I like people.
Yeah. Loser.
Yeah, I mean, we could wrap it up. It would have to switch speeches to do that. I don't know.
I think that's
So there's a
acceptable. You
quote
just got to
from-
go for the best lines.
It's not from the speech, but apparently he said this. This is on the presidential Lincoln website. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide. I don't think that one works.
No,
He's got some dark quotes there.
Yeah.
no, he was a dark guy.
Yeah.
All right, so let's imagine this. Second inaugural last graph. And then, all right, so let's think with where what does Trump say in response to the different lines with malice toward none? I mean, he's got a lot of malice.
Malice towards
Except
all.
to who does he want to have malice to?
I have another idea, which
Yeah.
is that some of Lincoln's most exalted phrases could just be used, and then Trump could get mad and demand to cancel things. So just let's get a great Lincoln quote, and then Trump could say, "I already canceled the penny. Now I'm defunding the memorial." And then Lincoln can have another quote, and then Trump could say, "That's it. The capital of Nebraska will now be
Trump.
yeah, the Gulf of Trump."
There was a quote from again, sorry, Lincoln's quotes are kind of lame, but he says, having ever regarded government as their deadliest bane, they make a jubilee of the suspension of its operation.
Good Lincoln quotes.
I already closed USAID. I'm closing the tunnel.
The tunnel, the memorial, Nebraska. Yeah.
I like that. You know, so
Center.
malice toward
Yeah.
none. I'm closing the
I'm
tunnel.
redeveloping Lincoln Center.
Yeah. All right, this is where we're going with this. All right. So tunnel, Nebraska, memorial, what was it? Lincoln Center.
Mm-hmm. Illegalizing neck beards.
Yeah, and Illinois license plate.
Land of Lincoln.
Why not just
Logs
cancel
or
Illinois?
something.
Yeah. All right, I think I got it here. And I already took out the penny. All right, I think that's it.
And what's the crescendo?
Well, this is the crescendo. So
yeah,
he's doing, Lincoln's doing the crescendo of the last graph of and Trump is punctuating it with, I'm going to blot out your memory. But then what's the bang at the end?
It's the worst thing. Lincoln. Do we let Lincoln end with a zinger or Trump end with
I think we got to
idiocy?
end with a zinger. We got to give Lincoln the last line, because otherwise it could be seen as Trump dominating Lincoln.
Well, it should be, him saying, I still think that the government, well, we did
Oh,
of the people, by the people, but, something about shall not perish from the earth. And then maybe Trump could say something about a third term.
all right, I'm going to work on that.
He has some short quotes. I know that my quotes here are boring about him. He had one that said, I never despair of sustaining myself before the people upon any measure that will stand a full investigation. He also said, broken by it too may be, bow to it I never will.
About what? His wife?
It just says politics inspirational. 1839, so it's before he becomes.
Maybe you want Trump in there insulting Mary Todd now that we mentioned it?
Has he ever said anything about Mary Todd?
No, but you could just take something that he said about someone else and put it there. Kind of a dog. Poor Mary Todd.
Poor Mary Todd Lincoln.
Yeah, poor Mary Todd. Well, she's
All
going to
right.
win the Tony, I think.
Guys, thank you. This was super helpful. All right, we've got 9 minutes left. Alicia, agenda item.
I have no agenda item. I was just a sub.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so the government agency that I was closest to, not a government agency, but the funding source that I was close to on the chopping block is NPR. I don't know what yours would be, Ben. Alicia, what would yours be?
What do you mean by closest?
Well, were you ever at the Institute of Peace? Were you?
The first talk I gave when I started doing a lot of this research was at USIP.
Okay. So I know a lot about NPR, and I do not think it would be good if they were defunded. And yet, if they were, I know they'll survive, and I understand the law of unintended consequence. They probably will do a lot of counter mobilization, and not only will things be fine, if things aren't fine, it might be not fine in a way we didn't expect. Like they might become, I don't know, captured by their funders. So take an organization that you're really close to, and what do you think will be the consequence? Or can you spin out a scenario where it's something other than dire, Trump trying to take away their funding?
We just met, but you should know that a lot of people have called me Cassandra. So I don't know if I've got a happy ending for you here.
Alicia's never been a happy ending person.
But Cassandra, the last thing is hope. Hope is still there.
Well, because she warns you that this will happen, and she might have warned people that this would happen, but they never listen. So that's the problem.
Yeah.
I hope for the best for NPR. I think it's going to be really challenging. I think it's sad that the U.S. never really had a public broadcaster in the way that other countries have had, which is actually funded by the government and that it is sustaining.
So the entity that I am closest to is the Justice Department.
Yeah.
And a lot of its different components. And look, the thing that the Justice Department has going for it is that it is an organization of enormous depth. And there are, the number of career people who have, unlike just about any other agency, they have obligations to the judges before whom they practice. They have, they are accountable to, their licensing agencies, which are uniformly controlled by state Supreme Courts. And so poisoning the well of good faith at the Justice Department is actually a hard job. That said, they're making a pretty good
Yeah.
run at it.
Yeah.
And, like, is the department right now in a position to snap back? Yes. Has it sustained a lot of damage in terms of institutional memory leaving and being fired? Yes. Is it doing a lot of things that it shouldn't be doing? Yes. Are career people mostly not taking part in that? Also, yes. Which means if you get rid of this political echelon and replace it with a responsible political echelon, and by the way, responsible political echelon is either of the left or the right. That is not a political comment except in the limited sense that this particular administration is completely lawless. You would have a pretty normal functioning Justice Department pretty quickly. The caveat being that it will have lost a lot of its institutional memory, a lot of its senior people, a lot of its most talented people. And so you have a project in rebuilding it, but it's a very doable project for a talented management team and is that still true 3.5 years from now? I don't know. And we're only 6 months in, not even 6 months in. How assiduously they work at this is is an open question.
Yeah.
So I don't know is the short answer.
I think there's also that most of this seems pretty systemic to me. So it's not just like attacks on departments or funding bodies, but it's also attacks on researchers and institutions that produce the people that would potentially replace the ones who have been pushed out. And the longer that goes, the longer I worry about potential recovery. And when I think about some departments like state, I don't think they really rebounded from the last administration. They had major gaps that they never really were able to fill. And there were lots of roles that required, I don't understand this about you guys, the whole political appointee or acceptance approval thing is kind of crazy for me in a bureaucracy. But like there were lots of gaps that had just never been filled from the last time. And so it's not just now and it's not just the departments.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that Justice would be one that was able to weather this so well. That's one I'm very worried about. I just try to take my silver linings when they can. I still don't know why the Institute of Peace has to exist if there's a State Department, but that's okay. They have a nice building. It's not okay.
It is a great building. And I do want to say, as I said the other day on Lawfare Live, I am hoping for USIP's survival. And if for any reason USIP does not survive, Lawfare has dibs on that.
Okay. Cool.
But I do want to say, look, there is a reason for USIP to exist separate from the State Department, and it's that the State Department isn't a think tank. USIP is a think tank. Now, the real question is whether I think there's a good argument to make that USIP should not be a federally run think tank. That, maybe the right model is, something closer to, the Congress has the idea, it creates the thing, it endows it, and then it runs as a private organization. And it's not the subject of regular appropriations. I could see that. But you would want to transition to that rather than obliterate.
The architect of that building is a famous Canadian, of course.
Safdie. Which famous Canadian?
Safdie.
Ah,
Michael Kinsley wrote a great editorial in 2011 in the LA Times supporting cutting the U.S. Institute of Peace. This has been a fun thing to talk about in contrarian circles for quite some time.
well, I will say, as somebody who is married to somebody whose career started at the United States Institute of Peace, or one of her early jobs was there, it is a wonderful organization, and it does a lot of great work, and it employs a lot of people who are thinking about uh, uh, conflict in areas of the world that we don't have another think tank that is really actively thinking about those conflicts. I will also say about that Ambassador Bill Taylor, who runs their Ukraine and Eastern Europe program, when Marichka had a cool, really cool exhibit that she wanted to display of diplomas of Ukrainian students who had not been finished their degrees because they'd been killed. And so their universities presented their diplomas in the form of this exhibit. And I texted Ambassador Bill Taylor and said, "Hey, can my friend Marichka do a display of diplomas in the atrium of USIP?" And he said, "Absolutely." And so I do think there's the theoretical question about USIP. There's also the real practical question, which is that there are a lot of people there, including Ambassador, with awesome name, by the way, Ambassador George Moose, who runs the place, and who are just doing good work. And if you want to transition it to private funding, uh, uh, do that in a responsible, reasonable way over time rather than just blow the place up. Look, speaking of blowing things up, we're going to blow up the show right now because it's 9:01 and we've already gone a minute longer than we should, and we shouldn't be doing that. We should begin on time and end on time. So, poof, this show is over.